This massive 8x4x6 Paludarium series has been fun to say the least, but if you're just tuning in, let me catch you up real quick. Having to start somewhere, I had to build the base. This whole build was centered around this Laguna tub, so I built an enclosure on top of it. This took some math and crazy ideas. Covered the walls in XPS board and hung my shelves. Carved them all down and added Polygem Zoopoxy 307 light. Did a quick paint job. Built a nearly 6 foot tall waterfall that has water crashing down, along with a hide inside, with fog that hugs the rocks and mystifies the enclosure. Built a tree using 6 different pieces of ghost wood, attaching it with Polygem Zoopoxy. Definitely one of my favorite parts of the enclosure. I decided to gamble with my chances and cut a huge hole in the tub for a viewing window. Framed it out and sealed it off. Added some plants in the terrestrial and aquatic section. This build is really a showpiece in my reptile room. I even had the full approval of Honey the supervisor. Cycled the water using beneficial bacteria and leopard daniels.
What's up everyone, welcome back to Brad's Bioactive Builds, where I do step-by-step, do-it-yourself, naturalistic reptile enclosures. In this video, I'm going to be wrapping up the build portion of this 8x4x6 Paludarium, where I install the glass, go over some mistakes I made and the corrections I had to do, adding in the vents, detailing and finishing off the front of the enclosure, getting everything dialed in for my Mertens to potentially breed, and so much more. I'll also be giving some final details on how you can win the free 4x2x2.5 foot enclosure with hardscape. Enough said, let's build.
I already applied this piece of plywood in a previous video, when I cut out the viewing window just to make it more structurally sound so I can fill it up with water and do the aquascape. But let's go ahead and fast forward to working on the outside of the enclosure. There wasn't too much room to work from pulling the hoses from the canister filters from this angle. I needed to be able to remove the hoses from the canister filters for cleaning. To fix this, I needed to cut out some holes, being careful not to cut into the stud. This was going to be a little bit of a pain because there was a lot of material to cut through. So I busted out the multi-tool. It didn't have to be clean or pretty because this part's going to be covered up. I'll just use a rasp later to file it down. This will give me the above axis I needed to make my life easier. And this way I can set my hoses up top without them falling behind the canister filters. Install the light so I can see a little bit better when working in this area. Now to really start dressing up the exterior of this 8x4x6 Paludarium. Got my side panel put into place and screwed it in. Cut some more plywood to finish off the header. Thinking about how I can make this totally Brad's Bioactive Builds customizable, I cut a hole in the center. Painted the inside and around the hole black. Also on the header where the hole was going to line up. Taped off the back side of the hole. And flipped it over. Using yet again another amazing animal safe product, Polygem 1618 Clear Epoxy. Pouring 2 parts A and 1 part B. Mixed it slowly and thoroughly to reduce any air bubbles. And poured it into the hole, filling it up only about 3/4 of the way. The next day I pulled the tape. And had my cured backing. Applied a Brad's Bioactive Build sticker to the inside of the hole. And then filled up the remainder of the hole using more epoxy. And wrapped the header with the piece of plywood we just made. Tightening it down with clamps to hold it in its place. I found these 2-inch speaker caps which fit the hole perfectly. Just remove the screen mesh, put it in its place, and screwed it down. It adds a nice little custom touch to this build. Cut another piece of plywood for my stiles that'll go between my header and my bottom substrate dam. And fit them into place. Buttoned it all together. Made my measurements for my 1.5 inch vent holes. Squared them off for accuracy. And marked my center. Drilled a pilot hole to act as my guide. And used an 1.5 hole saw to cut it out. Did the same thing for the bottom, but this time I'll be using 1 inch vents. I took a scrap piece of corner trim and a 2x4 to see where my vent was going to land on my bottom substrate dam, making sure I still went through that 2x4. These vents I drilled on a slightly downward angle. I did it this way for when the Mertens jump into the water and it splashes up, the water would drain back into the paludarium. Hit everything with a few coats of dry lock to protect the wood. My last coat being tinted a dark color. Covered the screw holes with wood plastic. Waited for everything to dry and sanded it down.
So I have got a lot of questions over the years on exactly how I do my glass tracks. The most important thing I found is making sure your distance from here to here is the same as it is from here to here. On both corners, obviously the middle too. So you just want to run everything level. That way, when you put your glass tracks in and then you put your actual glass in, it's able to slide freely all throughout. And that's what also allows you to get your cut perfect. Because if this part here is a little bit lower, this part's higher, lower, whatever, your glass isn't going to fit. So you just want to make sure it's 100% square going all the way around.
Now when I did the hardscape, I took these pieces of PVC board and extended them past the stiles. Now I do it this way to keep my monitor lizards from breaking out and not having to use locks. So essentially it removes access from them opening it up on their own. Used rubbing alcohol to wipe off the area where I'll be laying the glass tracks. The thicker track is the top and the thinner one is the bottom. This part is optional, but I did leave a slight lip on the inside of the enclosure so the track had something to rest up against. Pulled my measurements, the glass tracks I use only come in 6-foot sections. So I needed to order 2 and cut them down so they would meet in the center of the enclosure. Cleaned off the tracks to remove any dust and oil. Added a thin bead of PL3X. Less is more in this situation. You don't want your bead to bleed out when you press it into place, creating a mess. Since I added the lip, I applied a little bit to where the back side of the glass track was going to meet. Kept the factory edge in the center and stuck it into place. Holding it down with painter's tape. Took my other piece, once again leaving the factory edge in the center, that way when I opened up the sliding glass doors, it was a smooth transition. Now obviously if your enclosure is less than 6 foot, you can just cut it to size and do it all in one rip. Most of the products I use are located in my Amazon store in the description down below. Let everything cure for 24 hours.
I'd like to give a huge shout out to my Patreons. Your added support is super appreciated, where we get real-time behind-the-scenes footage of my current DIY project, one-on-one video calls, a really cool community where we get to talk builds, video footage and updates with all my reptiles, early access to my content, and so much more.
Picked up some corner trim from my local hardware store. Cut them on 45s. Added some wood glue. Put it in. And pressed it into place, clamping it down. After everything was lined up, sunk a couple of nails into it. And let the wood glue bond overnight. I really do like the look that this gives to the exterior of the enclosure. It really pulls it all together, giving it those nice finishing details. Added some more wood plastic. Smoothed it out with my finger. Sanded everything down, wiping away any dust. For the cabinet door that'll house my filters, I decided to go with the cleat system. To dress it up and have easy access, just had to cut some wood, install the cleats, added some corner trim, did a test fitting. All was well, so I moved on with the rest of the project. Nailed on some trim board. On the side of the enclosure I wanted it to look like one cohesive piece, but I still wanted access to my fogger and my ball shutoff valves. So when I cut the side piece of plywood, I also cut out this little notch. Added some backing to it so it would make it a little bit stronger and wouldn't bow. Use a Forstner bit to drill into it the depth of a magnet, along with the side of the enclosure. Applied Polygem 1618 and added some rare earth magnets into those holes. Brushing on some more clear epoxy to secure it all into place. This is one thing I really love about DIY. You can really tailor make and customize whatever it is you're building rather than just buying something that's store bought. Prepped everything for paint. Seeing as that the water on the inside of the enclosure is cycling, I wanted to tape everything off and prevent anything from falling in. But needless to say, I did a few coats of matte black paint. Added my 1.5 inch vents to the inside of the top header, and did the same to the outside. Pressed in my 1 inch vents to the inside of the bottom substrate dam, and pressed them into the outside of the enclosure as well. To make sure I had enough airflow, I also wanted to cut some vents into the ceiling. For this I used 2 inch vents. Pressed them in. I did screw these vents in for 2 reasons. 1, it was a bigger hole, and 2, if my Mertens were to climb on it and pulled it down, they could easily climb out. I do have some plugs so I can adjust heat and humidity during the winter and summer months. I did add 80mm CPU fans over the 2 inch vents to prevent condensation from building up on the front glass and increasing airflow if needed. Taking waterproofing one step further, I did add clear epoxy between the Zoopoxy and the PVC board. Some potential issues I saw coming up in the future was getting water damage between the glass track and the corner trim. For this reason, I added clear epoxy. Another potential issue I saw was the paint on the inside that I applied getting scraped off by the Mertens claws, so I applied epoxy. Popped the lid off to my nest box so I could add my thermostat and regulate the substrate temperature. Stuck the probe in from the outside of the enclosure into the nest box, and put it to my target area. Stuck on some zip tie mounts, and bonded them into place using more epoxy. Prepped my zip ties. To waterproof my probe, I took silicone and applied it between the probe head and the wire itself. And removed the tape while the silicone was still wet. Let it cure for 24 hours. Slid on some heat shrink wrap, and hit it with the heat gun. Crimped off the end with needle nose pliers for extra insurance to make sure it was waterproof. Zip tied the probe into place. And continued filling up the nest box with a mix of soil and sand. Added some springtails and charcoal to stabilize everything. Set up my Vivarium Electronics VE300. Close the blaster gate to the lid of my nest box, and put the lid back on. Installed the sliding glass doors. To me, this is always a moment of truth, hoping that the glass shop cut your glass to spec and it slides back and forth smoothly. Stuck on the glass handles. I don't use the adhesive that they come with, I use Gorilla Tape. After a few days, I got some temp readings of the nest box to make sure everything was running stable. And now that I had on the glass doors, I was able to get some readings all throughout the enclosure to make sure I was hitting my target temperatures and humidity. With the canister filters filled with water, it was pretty heavy, so my buddy Riddler Reptiles suggested making a kickstand. Definitely check out his channel for some pretty cool DIY builds. But this way I can just pull my shelf right onto it, pull out the pre-filter, and clean as needed. Attach a Brad's Bioactive Build sign onto the side of the enclosure that was given to me by Will Exotic and Ravishing Reptiles. I was gifted a really cool Monitor Fest sign by Apex Mike, with the original artwork created by Adeline Robinson. Michael Brown with Native Range Studios sent me these really cool locality plaques. With easy to use mounting brackets, it really dresses up any enclosure that you have. But for this project, I removed the brackets and just used basic command strips to mount them to the side of the enclosure. I believe what you do to the inside of the enclosure is art itself, but dressing up the outside really brings it to the next level. That's why these plaques are a must-have. I'll link his contact information and Instagram account in the description down below. When building something this big, there's going to be issues, obstacles, and mistakes. I find that's when I have to dial it in, adapt, and overcome to hit my mark of success. And that result is watching my Mertens look over their kingdom. I was really never too big into fish, and they definitely caught me off guard. I didn't realize how much I would enjoy watching them swim around, creating their own hierarchy. Make sure to stay tuned, things are going to get really interesting, but I would like to thank you all for coming with me on this journey as I showed you how I built this paludarium.
This has been a fun project to put together, but I'm really looking forward to showing you all adding the fish and Mertens. That'll be in the upcoming videos. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps this channel continue to grow. For the free enclosure giveaway, I'll be doing a live to make the announcement, where we can also talk DIY builds, and I can answer any questions that you have. So don't forget to hit the bell notification so you don't miss out. If you're not all caught up in the series and looking for ways to enter to win, check out this playlist right up here. For the next video in the series, check it out right there. For another video you might like, check it out right here. Thanks for watching.